I am finally able to talk again after my little snafu. We'll get into that in segment 2. But in the meantime, there hasn't really been any news for Michigan. It's been all quiet on the Western Front. However, I've noticed something of a trend that's happening. It's not any of y'all. It's, unless you're a rival fan, it's just a complete downplaying of not only what Michigan accomplished this year, which has been an ongoing theme, but there's a new theme of all of the Michigan players just kind of are terrible in the eyes of a lot of rival type people. And I want to talk about it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. We are finally back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And like I said, yeah, we'll eventually get to the ridiculous of why I was not able to talk. Parts of it might be kind of gross, but we're going to get to it. Nonetheless, I woke up this morning and still not feeling 100%, but I'm sitting there perusing my Wolverines Wire Facebook page. I forgot to probably introduce myself and do all that stuff, but I'm perusing like the Wolverines Wire Facebook page, and there's always like a Trent Knoop and I used to always discuss this when he was with me. Just how annoying it is that every time like you post something that's like, you know, it could be, you know, just a quote from a Michigan player like, yeah, we're going to have to play really good against Rutgers or something like that. Or like, yeah, we think we can beat Maryland this week. And you go and you see a bunch of laughing emojis, right? And every time I click on the laughing emojis, without fail, the person is from Ohio. Without fail. Sometimes you get Michigan State people in that mix, but most of the time it's Ohio State people, almost always. So it's hilarious that is how that always goes, because it's like, okay, great, you're laughing at it. The fun part was the week of the Ohio State game, the week of the Rose Bowl, and the week of the national championship game, because anytime that was like, yeah, we think we can play good, we think we can do whatever, right? Any kind of thing that, you know, these guys would say like, oh yeah, if we play good, we have a really good chance to win the game. And without fail, every single time it was, you just get a bunch of Buckeyes in there laughing. Well, that trend is kind of moved forward a little bit to, and I'm sure a lot of you are seeing this on social media. Every single Michigan draftable player is supposedly not very good, is the new thing that I see. And annoyingly, my computer's being weird here. But every single time that they that a draft analyst says anything, because this is how I first started seeing it, was like, you know, JJ McCarthy is surging up the draft board. So, you know, Daniel Jeremiah has JJ McCarthy at number 8 overall in his newest mock draft. Not to slam the national arm of USA Today Sports Media Group, but like, he's not even in the first round on theirs, but he's becoming a top 10 pick in a lot of others. He was, or around there, right? We've seen number 12, number 13-ish, you know, number 8 now, according to Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel Jeremiah says, yeah, he's an acquired taste, but he's kind of like Alex Smith. Alex Smith, who was famously number 1 overall. And people conflate the idea that JJ McCarthy was in a run-heavy system that wasn't asking him to put the entire team on his back on a game-by-game basis with his playability. And so anytime that you see like these NFL draft scouts starting to just swoon over him now that they're sitting down and watching the film, go in the comments on like YouTube, not YouTube, but like Twitter or whatever, And you see a bunch of people that just say that he's terrible or say things of the nature that he just cannot throw the ball. And it's like, do you not watch the games? Like, even the Ohio State fans, I understand 2022, he was not like exceptional at the outset of that game. At the outset. I mean, he still, completed a couple long passes. They said he couldn't throw the deep ball, which is what Gus Johnson had said. They said the kid can't throw the deep ball. And then he did, he threw the deep ball. And, I understand Cornelius Johnson was wide open, but, he was not, they weren't connecting. You still have to connect on those. I've seen plenty of quarterbacks struggle with that from time to time. JJ is not the only one who was struggling with that in the moment. And but now you see a lot of people try to downplay just what he is capable of. And I think one of the funniest ones, sometimes you get some scouts that say it too, right? And this one comes from a scout, and I tweeted about this. And let's see. Theo Ash, NFL. I don't know what he writes for. He's part of the Stay Hot Pod. NFL TikTok thought leader says, taking JJ McCarthy in the top 10 would be a disaster, I fear. Dude is a mid-NFL athlete with processing problems. Good luck. Processing problems are not really his issue. Is he the greatest at reading a defense? No, not necessarily. But he obviously is able to process, extend plays, do different things with his arm that other people cannot just do, right? It is an athletic ability. Everyone's obviously been able to take a look at that and say that's ridiculous. So like I quote tweeted that and said it's giving big Devin Bush can't do sideline to sideline type vibes, right? So it is really, really, really funny to see, just because that's probably the only NFL draft scout-ish type. He's not a scout. He's just a TikTok guy. But you're seeing so many people have these polarizing opinions. And it's not just JJ. It's Roman Wilson, right? Roman Wilson before the Senior Bowl, and even probably still, was, I hope you enjoy your time in the CFL. And now you've got Matt Miller from ESPN that's fawning over him, saying, I'm a big Roman Wilson fan. And like he's probably a second-round pick. And I've even seen a mock draft where he ended up going in the first round, right? Blake Corum, I saw a thread on him. It started with an NFL person saying like he is just an incredible runner, best pure runner in this draft. And then you see a bunch of just really weird narratives about how he just goes down at first contact, which is okay. If you want to talk about his freshman year, that might be the case. Has not been the case for a couple of years now. I even saw one breakdown that said that he has durability issues, that he's just often injured, which is not the case. He was injured and still played through pain in his second year. And then he had a season-ending injury that, obviously with a helmet to the knee, and still tried to play in 2022. And then last year he was healthy. Like he didn't miss any time for injury. So the narratives that surround Michigan are just bizarre. And obviously we've dealt with that for some time. We're going to continue on this train, and we're going to do so here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, grocery bills, if you haven't noticed, are super expensive these days. I mean, you walk in, you get a couple things. Once upon a time, it would have been $10, and you end up spending like $50, $60 for like 4 items that just are barely anything. It's shocking. But now guess what? They don't have to be, because you can start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every single time you shop. Ibata is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight that you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibata, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers. That includes Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta, just by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All right, so why was I not able to talk? We'll continue down the train of everything, but I didn't want to lead with this because it's just a weird way. And it's part of it is kind of gross, but I feel like I owe you an explanation. So a couple days ago, the plan was to have podcast shows all week, and here we are with 3 days in between. We will have a show on Saturday, and how do I know I promise a lot of things, doesn't always happen. How do I know it will happen this time? Well, because we are doing an early show now, and we have a guest that I'm interviewing later in the day, and that will take up the whole show. That's going to be from PFF to discuss Michigan's NFL draft prospects ahead of the combine. So we will have a show this weekend, if not more. Hopefully we do more. That's to make up for it. So what happened? It all started with me being on the carnivore diet. I started trying to do that because I've really struggled with, I haven't been sick in like a year, but at the same time, I don't feel good most of the time. I've just been gaining weight. It's not that I'm eating poorly. I'm just gaining weight kind of no matter what I do. 50 pounds heavier than I'd like to be, and about 35 pounds heavier than I was pre-COVID. So I was like, okay, I've seen a lot of good things about the carnivore diet. That's kind of whenever I've lost weight, I've kind of unintentionally done that diet. And so I was starting to do that. I had a couple days of doing so. I was doing some things around the house earlier this week, Tuesday, I think it would have been. So I'm doing some stuff around the house. And I'm like, I'm going to order DoorDash, and I'm just going to order a burger just without the, I'm going to cheat a little bit, just a little bit. And I'm going to order a burger with some of the veggies on it. I'm not supposed to really do that. And with the mayo on it, but no bun. And so it came, and I started eating it, and I was like, it feels really dry. Oh, they didn't put the aioli on it that they're supposed to. I'm like, oh, I've got some garlic aioli in my refrigerator. So I pull it out, and it's a squeeze bottle. So I just douse it in it. And the consistency of it was not right. And I, being a typical guy, just was like, whatever, and just dug in and realized it tastes weird. And then I eat like most of it. And then I was like, almost done. And I'm like, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that, because I'm pretty sure I just gave myself food poisoning. As someone who's had salmonella poisoning twice in my life, it's not something I recommend on anybody. It's I've had it twice. It's basically imagine the most miserable week that you've ever had from a physical standpoint, and I've done that twice. So I was like freaking out about it, and got some solutions that weren't good. So instead of, this is also a tale of faithfulness, because I was not being faithful. And it was like Sarah prayed over me, and she was like, just trust that God will help you. And instead, I took matters into my own hands. And long story short, I damaged my esophagus, and I could not speak. So, I couldn't even, eventually I could whisper, and that was good. And sorry, my eye seems to be bothering me if you're watching. Eventually I could whisper, but I couldn't speak. So, when Zuri was acting up and stuff like that, which she does anytime she sees anyone have the audacity to walk on the sidewalk outside of our house here, I couldn't do anything. And if she was sitting in my spot, if I get up to go to the bathroom or something like that, or get up to get a glass of water, come back, and she sits, likes to take over whatever my spot is on the couch, and I couldn't say anything. But like it was a pretty abysmal day and a half there. Felt like someone had their hands around my throat and just were actively choking me. It's kind of the feeling I fear of having on an airplane, and yet I just had it here in real life. So eventually I was able to whisper. Eventually I was able to talk. Yesterday, I was able to talk with just only a little pain for the first half of the day, and then the rest of the day was fine unless I spoke in falsetto, which is how I speak to Zuri most of the time. So that's why we didn't have a podcast. My own idiocy. And I've felt not great physically in general after that. Part of it might have been the carnivore diet. Part of it might be giving myself a little food poisoning. But it was just a bunch of mistakes, a series of mistakes. So thankfully that is over now. And apparently I've taken up pretty much the entire second segment with this. So we're gonna break, and we'll get back to the ridiculousness of rival fans, and we're gonna do that here in just a moment. Before we do, get buckets with your first deposit on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins, and obviously you've got NBA basketball, you got college basketball, all kinds of different things you can play around with. You can bet on all of your favorite players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. You can hammer that same-game parlay of Michigan halftime lead and game loss. A heck of a lot more than that as well available to you on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, I did not mean for that to take up a whole segment. I thought it was going to take a minute, but I was very long-winded, I guess, because I can actually talk again. Nonetheless, so I just find it really funny, just the fact that you see a lot of just general unbelief in Michigan. And the combine is going to be clutch this next week for these Michigan players, because it usually is for a lot of high-end players. But it is funny to me that normally when you see a team win a national championship, now keeping in mind, Michigan will probably break the record, right? It's already breaking the combine record with 18 players going. But generally, Georgia wins, you see 5 Georgia guys go in the first round. It's just Alabama wins, same deal. Josh Pate, the entire reason he picked Ohio State preseason to win the entire national championship was because they were predicted to have the most first-round picks. Now, really, they're only predicted to have one now, in Marvin Harrison Jr. And you would excuse anyone for thinking that maybe Michigan wasn't up to snuff if, like I said, I've seen some first round mocks recently that don't even have a Michigan player going in the first round, right? There's some people who are of the mind that no one really deserves to go in the first 2. And those people are insane. But it really, ultimately, when it comes to this, I would not be surprised if you see a couple guys work their way in, right? Like we talk about J.J. McCarthy. Blake Corum, probably not, because running backs going in the first round. Yes, the Lions went and got Jahmyr Gibbs, but that's a pretty rare thing, right? At this point, usually don't see running backs going that early anymore. So it would be kind of surprising to see that, but I could see Roman Wilson, I could see Chris Jenkins, I could see Junior Colson when they show off their speed, their athleticism, because the problem for Michigan is that it just played so well as a team. Now, obviously, the rival people out there will screech cheating, but you all know the truth of that, right? And it's just a way to cope. It's all a coping mechanism. And you can, if you see rival fans out there on social media trying to say, you know, asterisk and, oh, JJ's not very good, and, you know, Blake Corum, he, you know, goes down at first touch and Roman Wilson should be playing in the CFL, yada, yada, yada. All you really have to ask them is, what stage of grief is this? Because that's all it continues to be, is the 5 stages for them, right? Michigan won the national championship. It wasn't close. I mean, yeah, maybe it was close to Ohio State. Excuse me. Still some residual what have you here. Yeah, maybe it was close to Ohio State. They're close to Maryland when you've got utter turmoil happening. But when it came, and you know, I guess they're close to Alabama, but it wasn't close to Washington. It wasn't close with most of the other teams they played, Penn State and all of that. But at the same time, I mean, Michigan just kind of ran through its schedule. It was the quintessential team, and it was not a flashy deal like you see with others, right? Like, that's kind of the difference. Why do other teams get celebrated, especially national champions? Well, because for the most part, they're flashy. Now, Georgia in 2021 was not flashy, but it was in the SEC and took down Alabama and all of that kind of stuff. Well, they hadn't initially, but then they eventually did. Right? It's Michigan's just going to be hated on in a different way, as you can see by just this. Every single Michigan player sucks. No NFL team should take them. All this kind of ridiculousness that tends to come from Michigan being really good. I'm curious to see how things change if Sharon Moore is able to keep the level of competition from the Wolverines high. Because Jim Harbaugh was a lightning rod for attention. And I think it could serve the players a little bit better in some ways by him not being around. I know that sounds weird, but I think that without Jim Harbaugh, people might take Michigan a lot more seriously, especially if it's a contender again this year or within the next 2 or 3 years. But it is funny because we've seen J.J. McCarthy make insane throws. And it wasn't just the one to Roman Wilson in the Ohio State game. He did that same exact throw to Colston Loveland in the MSU game. We saw him make a couple insane throws against East Carolina and UNLV. You know, we've seen him just consistently be just incredible. He's the only Michigan quarterback in my lifetime, I feel, where fans were not crying for the backup. And it's funny to me that rival fans look at it and say, nope, not that good. Roman Wilson, not that good. You know, they don't really talk a lot about the defensive players that are departing, only the ones that are still around because they're begging for them to be in the transfer portal. They're begging for Will Johnson, Mason Graham, and Kenneth Grant to come to either their school or go to another school. And it's just not reality. So it's just funny. And you can just tell people how to cope. Or you can tell them to cope and seethe. You can tell them to ask them, what stage of grief is this? Because that's all it is. They clearly don't know ball, because now that the people that know ball are looking, they're sitting there saying, okay, wow. And it's hilarious that just traditional rival fans or average fans that were told by rival fans that J.J. McCarthy or anyone else in the field is not that good, that they are going to tell Daniel Jeremiah, guess what? You don't know what you're talking about. J.J. McCarthy would be lucky to be a 5th rounder, if that. Okay. All right. So anyway, it's fun. All right. Like I said, we'll be back with, we have we're going to have a guest on Saturday coming from PFF, first time on the show. And that is Brad Spielberger. And he's going to discuss Michigan players at the combine. Like I said, 18 guys. So this was a good segue into that show. And then we'll talk to him and hear a little bit of his thoughts. So that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back on Saturday. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.